The contraction hit Simone Parker like a freight train at 3:47 a.m., her scream echoing through the empty hallway of St. Mary's Hospital. She gripped the cold metal bed rail, her dark skin glistening with sweat, her heart hammering against her ribs as she searched desperately for her husband's face. "Derek," she gasped, her voice breaking. "Derek, please don't leave me." But Derek Parker was already backing toward the door, his phone buzzing insistently in his hand. His eyes, the same eyes that had promised to love her forever just 2 years ago, couldn't even meet hers as another contraction tore through her body. "I have to take this call, Simone," he muttered, his voice flat and distant. It's work." Simone knew it wasn't work. She'd seen the text messages lighting up his screen. "Derek baby, my water just broke too. I need you here. Now. Your wife is in labor." Nurse Patricia Wilson stepped between them, her brown face fierce with indignation. "This is your child being born." Derek's phone buzzed again. Through her pain, Simone caught a glimpse of the contact name that shattered her world completely, Tanya Redheart, baby mama. The room spun. Her husband, the man who'd held her hand through morning sickness, who'd painted the nursery pale yellow because they wanted to be surprised, had another woman, another baby, another life. "I'm sorry," Derek whispered, and those 2 words carried the weight of 2 years of lies. I can't do this." The door clicked shut. Simone's world collapsed as another contraction seized her, this one so powerful she thought she might die from the combination of physical and emotional agony. She was alone. Completely, utterly alone, bringing their daughter into a world where her father had just walked away. "Breathe, honey," Nurse Patricia's warm hand found hers. "Just breathe. You're not alone. I'm right here." But Simone couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only feel the devastating truth that her marriage, her life, everything she believed in, had been a lie. And now she was about to become a single mother with no warning, no preparation, no idea how she'd survive. "I can't do this," she sobbed, echoing Derek's words. "I can't do this alone." "Yes, you can," Patricia said firmly, squeezing her hand. "You're stronger than you know. And baby, you're about to find out just how strong." Through the window, Simone could see Derek's car pulling out of the parking lot, tail lights disappearing into the night. He was driving toward another woman, another birth, another life he'd chosen over theirs. At 5:23 a.m., as the first rays of sunlight painted the hospital room golden, Destiny Parker entered the world in her mother's arms. No father present. No family except the nurses who'd stayed beyond their shifts to support a woman they barely knew. Simone looked down at her daughter's perfect face, her grandmother's nose, her own stubborn chin, and felt something break open in her chest. Not just heartbreak but something else. Something fierce and protective and unbreakable. "It's just you and me now, baby girl," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "But I promise you this, I will never ever abandon you. No matter what comes, you will always have me." Outside, Derek's phone was probably buzzing with updates from his other life. But inside this room, a new story was beginning. A story of a mother's love, a daughter's future, and a strength that would prove greater than any betrayal. Simone Parker had no idea that in less than 6 months, everything would change again. That a phone call would come that would alter their lives forever. That the great Aunt Grace she barely remembered would reach across death itself to lift them up. But for now, holding her daughter as the morning light grew stronger, Simone made a vow that would carry them through the dark days ahead. She would survive this. She would thrive. And she would make sure Destiny knew she was loved beyond measure. The inheritance of strength had already begun. 3 weeks after Destiny's birth, Simone sat in her empty apartment, staring at the eviction notice in her trembling hands. The medical bills from the birth were stacked on the coffee table like a mountain of impossible debt, and Derek's last child support payment had bounced. Destiny slept in her arms, blissfully unaware that their world was crumbling. 28 days, Simone whispered to herself, reading the notice again. "We have 28 days to come up with $1,200. Her maternity leave from the hospital wouldn't last much longer, and returning to work meant daycare costs she couldn't afford. The tiny one-bedroom apartment that had seemed cozy when Derek was helping with rent now felt like a trap closing in around them. The knock at the door made her jump. Through the peephole, she saw Carmen Rodriguez, her best friend since nursing school, holding grocery bags and wearing the determined expression that meant she wasn't taking no for an answer. "Let me in, girl," Carmen said the moment Simone opened the door. "And don't you dare tell me you're fine." Simone broke down completely. The tears she'd been holding back for weeks poured out as Carmen set down the groceries and pulled both mother and baby into her arms. "He took everything," Simone sobbed. The savings account, the car payments, everything. I don't know how to do this, Carmen. I work at the hospital, I'm supposed to help people, but I can't even help myself. Carmen held her tighter. Listen to me, Simone Parker. You are the strongest woman I know. Remember when you worked double shifts to get through nursing school? Remember when you organized that charity drive for the homeless shelter? You helped hundreds of people. Now it's time to let people help you. I can't ask for charity. It's not charity, it's community. That's what we do. We lift each other up. Carmen unpacked the groceries, formula, diapers, frozen meals, everything Simone had been rationing or going without. Then she pulled out an envelope. This is from the nurses at St. Mary's. Don't argue. Patricia organized it, and every single person on the maternity ward contributed. Simone opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was nearly $600 and a card signed by dozens of her colleagues. The message from Patricia read, "For our girl who gives so much love to every patient. Now let us love you back." I can't. Yes, you can. And there's more. Carmen pulled out her phone. I posted about your situation in the neighborhood Facebook group. Girl, the response has been incredible. Mrs. Thompson from the church wants to provide free childcare when you go back to work. The community center is donating a crib and baby supplies. And 3 different families have offered to help with groceries. Simone stared at her friend in amazement. In her darkest moment, when Derek's abandonment had made her feel worthless and alone, her community was proving that she had never been alone at all. Why? She whispered. Why would they do this for me? Because that's what real family does. Derek was never your family, he was just a man who lived in your house. Your family is everyone who shows up when you need them. That evening, after Carmen left, Simone sat feeding Destiny and looking around the apartment differently. Yes, it was small. Yes, money was still tight. But the refrigerator was full, the bills were manageable for now, and tomorrow Patricia was coming by to help her create a budget and a plan. She thought about Derek, probably dealing with his own complications now that Tanya had given birth too. He'd chosen the excitement of an affair over the responsibility of a marriage, and now he had 2 babies and 2 angry women instead of 1 grateful wife. His loss, baby girl, she murmured to Destiny. His loss completely. The next morning brought another surprise. Elder Mrs. Thompson arrived at 8 a.m. sharp, wearing her best church dress and carrying a bag of homemade baby food. Now don't you argue with me, child, she said, settling into the rocking chair like she belonged there. I raised 6 children and helped with 14 grandchildren. I know what I'm doing, and you need to know that this baby is going to grow up surrounded by love. As Mrs. Thompson began telling Destiny stories about her own children, Simone felt something she hadn't felt since the night Derek left. Hope. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is lawyer James Crawford. I need to speak with you about your great-aunt Grace Mitchell's estate. Please call me at your earliest convenience. This is urgent and concerns a significant inheritance. Simone stared at the message confused. Great-aunt Grace had died months ago, and Simone had barely known her. She remembered a stern woman who sent birthday cards with $5 bills, but they'd never been close. She was about to delete the text when Mrs. Thompson looked up from the baby. You better call that man back, child. Grace Mitchell was a special woman, and if she left you something, it's because she saw something special in you too. Simone looked down at the phone, then at Destiny sleeping peacefully in Mrs. Thompson's arms, then at the apartment filled with gifts from people who barely knew her but cared anyway. Maybe, just maybe, their story was about to take another turn. Simone's hands shook as she dialed James Crawford's number. Destiny was napping in her crib, and Mrs. Thompson had left after spending the morning teaching Simone how to make homemade baby food that would stretch their grocery budget. Crawford Law Offices, James Crawford speaking. This is Simone Parker. You sent me a message about my great-aunt Grace? Miss Parker, thank you for calling. I've been trying to reach you for weeks. I need you to come to my office as soon as possible. There's been a significant development regarding your great-aunt's estate. Simone sank onto the couch, still confused. Mr. Crawford, I think there's been a mistake. Aunt Grace and I weren't close. I barely saw her except at family reunions when I was little. Miss Parker, are you able to come in today? I really cannot discuss the details over the phone, but I assure you there's no mistake. Grace Mitchell specifically named you as her primary beneficiary. Primary beneficiary of what? She lived in that tiny house on Maple Street. I thought she was a church secretary her whole life. There was a pause. Miss Parker, I need you to sit down. I am sitting down. Grace Mitchell was worth approximately $83 million. The phone slipped from Simone's hands, clattering to the floor. Through the speaker, she could hear Mr. Crawford saying her name, asking if she was still there. But Simone couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't process what she just heard. $83 million. She must have heard wrong. Must have misunderstood. People like Great Aunt Grace, quiet church ladies who lived in small houses and sent modest birthday gifts, didn't have $83 million. She picked up the phone with trembling fingers. I'm sorry, can you repeat that? Your Great Aunt Grace Mitchell has left you an estate valued at approximately $83 million. There are some complexities to the inheritance that we need to discuss in person, but Miss Parker, you are about to become a very wealthy woman. The room spun. Simone looked around the apartment, at the eviction notice still sitting on the coffee table, at the stack of medical bills, at the donated groceries from her work friends, and tried to make sense of a world that had just turned completely upside down. How? She whispered. I'll explain everything when you come in. Can you be here this afternoon? I have the will, the documentation, and Grace's personal letter to you. A letter? She left specific instructions about why she chose you, Miss Parker. And I think after you read it, you'll understand that Grace Mitchell knew exactly what she was doing. After hanging up, Simone sat staring at Destiny's sleeping form. Less than a month ago, Derek had abandoned them both, leaving them with nothing but debt and heartbreak. Now, someone she barely remembered had just handed them a fortune beyond imagination. Carmen arrived an hour later to find Simone sitting in the same spot, still staring into space. Girl, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost. Carmen, sit down. Oh God, what now? Is Derek causing more problems? Because I swear. Great Aunt Grace left me $83 million. Carmen blinked. What? Twice. Then started laughing. Okay, for real though, what's going on? I'm serious. I just got off the phone with her lawyer. Great Aunt Grace, the woman who sent me $5 birthday cards, apparently had $83 million and she left it all to me. The laughter died on Carmen's lips. Are you serious right now? Simone nodded, handing her the lawyer's business card. I have to go to his office this afternoon. Carmen, what if this is real? What if this actually happened? Carmen stared at the card, then at Simone, then at little Destiny sleeping peacefully in her crib. Baby girl, she whispered, I think your luck just changed. But why me? I barely knew her. We talked maybe 5 times in my entire life. Maybe that's something you'll find out today. Carmen grabbed Simone's hands. Listen to me. Whether this is real or not, you're going to walk into that office with your head held high. You're going to ask all the right questions. And you're going to make smart decisions for you and Destiny. What if it's a mistake? What if? Then we'll deal with that too. But Simone, what if it's not? What if this is exactly what you and Destiny needed? What if this is the universe saying, Derek Parker was never worthy of you and now we're going to prove it? That afternoon, Simone dressed in her best interview outfit and took the bus downtown to Crawford Law offices. The building was tall and imposing, with marble floors and expensive art on the walls. She felt out of place and underdressed, but she thought about Destiny sleeping at home with Mrs. Thompson and found her courage. James Crawford was a distinguished black man in his 50s with kind eyes and a firm handshake. His office overlooked the city, and the walls were lined with law books and family photos. Miss Parker, please have a seat. Can I get you some water? Coffee? Water would be good. I'm still nursing. He handed her a bottle of water and settled behind his desk with a thick file folder. Let me start by saying that everything I'm about to tell you has been verified multiple times. Grace Mitchell was my client for over 20 years, and she was very specific about her wishes. He opened the folder and pulled out a sealed envelope with Simone's name written in careful cursive. She asked me to give you this first. She said it would help you understand. Simone's hands trembled as she opened the envelope and unfolded the letter inside. It was written on Grace's personal stationery, the same paper she'd used for those birthday cards. My dear Simone, if you're reading this, then I'm gone and you're probably very confused. Let me explain. I never married. Never had children. I spent my life working as a secretary, but I also spent it investing every penny I could save. I was good with numbers and better with patience. Over 60 years, $5 became 10, 10 became 50, 50 became thousands, and thousands became millions. I watched our family from a distance, and I watched you grow into the kind of woman I always hoped to be, kind, strong, dedicated to helping others. When you became a nurse, I knew you had the heart I was looking for. I've been following your life more closely than you know. I know about Derek's betrayal. I know about your struggles. I know you're raising that beautiful baby alone, and I know you're doing it with grace and dignity. You are inheriting this money not because you need it, but because you deserve it. Because you represent the best of our family. Because I trust you to use it wisely and well. The money comes with only one condition, that you remember where you came from and never forget to lift others up as you climb. Build something beautiful, Simone. Build a life worthy of that precious daughter. And know that somewhere I'm smiling. All my love, Great Aunt Grace. Simone looked up to find Mr. Crawford watching her with gentle eyes. She came to see you in the hospital the day Destiny was born, he said quietly. She stood outside your room and watched Derek leave. That's when she called me and made the final arrangements. She was there. She'd been keeping track of you for years. She knew about your marriage troubles before you did. Grace was very good at reading people. Simone folded the letter carefully, her heart full of gratitude for a woman she'd never really known but who had known her completely. So what happens now? Now, Mr. Crawford smiled, we change your life. The bank manager's eyes widened as he read the paperwork Mr. Crawford had prepared. Simone sat across from his desk holding Destiny, trying to process the surreal experience of opening accounts with numbers that had more zeros than she'd ever imagined. So the funds will be available immediately? Mr. Crawford asked. Yes, sir. We'll set up the trust accounts as specified, and Ms. Parker will have full access to the liquid assets. The investment portfolio will remain with your financial advisors as requested. Simone stared at the papers in front of her. $83 million. Even after taxes and legal fees, she was looking at more money than most people saw in several lifetimes. Miss Parker? The bank manager was speaking to her. Do you have any questions about the account structures? She looked up, realizing she'd been lost in thought. I'm sorry. This is all very overwhelming. I understand completely. Mr. Crawford has structured everything very conservatively. The trust funds for your daughter's education and future are protected, and your liquid accounts will provide more than enough for any reasonable expenses. Reasonable expenses? 3 days ago, buying formula had been a budget decision. Now she could buy anything she wanted. Walking out of the bank, Simone felt strangely disconnected from her own life. The same bus route that had brought her here now seemed absurd. She could afford any car she wanted, any house, any life. But what did she actually want? You're quiet, Mr. Crawford observed as they waited for the bus. It doesn't feel real yet. Yesterday I was worried about rent. Today, she gestured helplessly. Today you have choices. That's what Grace wanted for you, the freedom to choose your own path. The bus arrived and several passengers recognized Simone from the neighborhood. She'd been riding this route to and from work for 2 years, chatting with the same people, sharing the same struggles. Now she sat among them with a secret that felt like a wall between her old life and whatever came next. Mrs. Thompson was waiting when they got home, rocking Destiny and humming an old spiritual. How did it go, baby? She asked, studying Simone's face. It's real. All of it. Mrs. Thompson nodded slowly. Grace was a wise woman. Quiet but wise. She used to come to church sometimes, sit in the back, never made a fuss. But I could tell she was watching, learning, deciding who had good hearts and who didn't. Did you know? About the money? Suspected something. Nobody drives a 20-year-old car and lives in a tiny house unless they're saving for something bigger. I figured she was just careful with her pennies. Didn't know how many pennies she'd saved. That evening, after Mrs. Thompson left and Destiny was asleep, Simone sat in her apartment trying to make decisions. The eviction notice was still on the coffee table, but now it seemed like a relic from another life. She could move anywhere. Buy any house. Never work another day if she didn't want to. But what kind of life would that be for Destiny? What kind of example would that set? Her phone buzzed with a text from Derek. Can we talk? I made a mistake. Simone stared at the message for a long time. A week ago, those words might have broken her heart all over again. Now they just seemed pathetic. She deleted the message without responding. Carmen arrived an hour later with takeout and wine. Okay, spill everything. What was the lawyer's office like? How does it feel to be rich? Are you going to buy a mansion? Slow down, Simone laughed, grateful for her friend's presence. I don't know what I'm going to do yet. It still doesn't feel real. Girl, you better make it feel real quick because the world is about to treat you very differently. They sat on the floor eating Chinese food while Destiny slept nearby. It felt like every other evening they'd spent together, except for the bank documents spread across the coffee table like proof of an impossible dream. What do you really want? Carmen asked. Forget the money for a minute. If you could build the perfect life for you and Destiny, what would it look like? Simone thought carefully. I want her to grow up knowing she's loved and safe. I want to keep working. Being a nurse isn't just a job for me, it's who I am. I want to help people. I want to give back to the community that supported us when we had nothing. Okay, so how does the money help with that? I could open a clinic. A place where people don't have to worry about whether they can afford care. I could provide services for new mothers, especially single mothers. The ideas started flowing faster. I could create a foundation, help other women who are going through what I went through. Carmen smiled. Now you're talking. That sounds like something Grace would approve of. But what about Destiny? What about raising her with normal values when she's going to inherit all this wealth? You teach her the same way your mother taught you and your grandmother taught her. Money doesn't change character, it just reveals it. And your character was already solid before you had a penny. That night, Simone lay awake thinking about Grace's letter. The condition wasn't really a condition at all, it was a reminder. Remember where you came from. Lift others up as you climb. She thought about Derek, probably sleeping next to Tanya, dealing with 2 crying babies and realizing that excitement wasn't the same as happiness. She thought about the nurses who'd collected money for her, not knowing she was about to become wealthier than all of them combined. Most of all, she thought about Destiny, sleeping peacefully in her crib, unaware that her life had just changed forever. Tomorrow Simone would start making plans. Real plans for a real future built on Grace's unexpected gift. But tonight, she just held her daughter and whispered thank you to a great aunt she was finally beginning to understand. Money might not buy happiness, but it could buy choices. And Simone Parker was ready to choose wisely. 2 weeks after the inheritance became official, Simone found herself in an unfamiliar position, having to turn down help. I appreciate everything you've done, she told Patricia as they walked through St. Mary's maternity ward during her return visit. But I can't keep taking donations when I could solve other people's problems instead. Patricia stopped walking. Honey, what are you talking about? Simone had been dreading this conversation, but it was time to tell the truth. Remember my great-aunt Grace? The inheritance was substantial. More than substantial. How substantial? Substantial enough that I want to establish a fund for struggling new mothers. Substantial enough that the hospital could have a new family support center if they wanted one. Patricia's eyes widened. Simone, just how much money are we talking about? Enough to change lives. Starting with mine but not ending there. The conversation continued in Patricia's office, where Simone explained Grace's story and her own plans to honor the inheritance with purpose. I want to stay connected to nursing, she said. But I also want to create something bigger. A foundation that helps women like I was 3 weeks ago. Abandoned, scared, facing parenthood alone. Patricia leaned back in her chair, studying Simone's face. You know, there's a vacant building on 5th Street that used to be a clinic. The owner's been trying to sell it for 2 years. Perfect size for what you're describing. Really? Really? And I know about 15 nurses who'd love to work somewhere that actually puts patients before profit. That afternoon, Simone drove past the building in her new car, a modest sedan that Carmen had insisted she buy after the bus broke down on their shopping trip. The building was small but well located, with good parking and easy access. A sign in the window listed the realtor's information. She called from the parking lot. Yes, it's still available, the realtor said. The asking price is $400,000, but the owner might negotiate. Are you looking to buy or lease? Buy, Simone said, still amazed at how easily those words came. Can we see it today? 3 hours later, she was signing purchase papers. The building would need renovations, but it had good bones and the right feel. She could already imagine the waiting room filled with comfortable chairs, the exam rooms designed for privacy and comfort, the offices where social workers could help new mothers navigate everything from WIC applications to housing assistance. Carmen found her that evening sitting on the floor of the empty building, holding Destiny and sketching renovation plans on a legal pad. You bought a building, Carmen said, settling down beside them. I bought a building. And you're going to turn it into a clinic. A family wellness center. Medical care, social services, support groups, parenting classes. Everything I wished I'd had access to when Derek left. Carmen looked around the empty space. You know what this means, right? What? Derek is going to hear about this. About the money, about the clinic, about everything. He's going to come sniffing around. Simone had been trying not to think about that possibility, but Carmen was right. News traveled fast in their community, and a newly wealthy single mother opening a clinic would definitely be news. Let him come, she said finally. I'm not the same woman he left in that hospital room. No, Carmen agreed, watching Simone sketch out the children's play area. You're definitely not. The next morning brought the first test of Simone's resolve. Derek called at 7 a.m., his voice sickeningly sweet. Simone, baby, I've been thinking about us. About what I threw away. Can we meet somewhere and talk? There's nothing to talk about, Derek. Please. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. But we have a daughter together. Doesn't she deserve to have her father in her life? Simone looked down at Destiny, who was focused intently on her morning bottle. She deserves a father who would never abandon her. You proved you're not that man. People change, Simone. I've learned from my mistakes. Have you? What happened to Tanya and your other baby? Silence. Then, that's complicated. I'm sure it is. Just like we became complicated when something shinier came along. Look, I heard you came into some money. Good for you. I'm not asking for anything for myself. I just want to be part of Destiny's life. There it was. The real reason for the call. Derek had heard about the inheritance and suddenly wanted to be a father again. The money didn't make me a better person, Derek. It just gave me more options. You, on the other hand, showed me exactly who you were when you walked out of that hospital room. Simone. I'm hanging up now. If you want to discuss custody or visitation, you can have your lawyer call mine. Otherwise, leave me alone. She ended the call and immediately dialed Mr. Crawford. We need to talk about protecting Destiny's interests, she said. Her father is about to become very interested in being a parent. I'll draw up the paperwork, he assured her. Don't worry. Grace anticipated this possibility too. That afternoon, Simone met with contractors about the clinic renovations. She also met with Patricia and 2 other nurses about staffing plans. The project was becoming real, taking shape, growing beyond her imagination. Elder Mrs. Thompson stopped by that evening while the contractors were leaving. Heard you bought the old clinic building, she said, settling into the rocking chair that had become permanently stationed in Simone's living room. News travels fast. Baby, good news travels at the speed of light in this neighborhood. Bad news travels even faster. She looked around at the building plans spread across the coffee table. Grace would be proud. I hope so. Sometimes I worry I'm moving too fast, making too many changes at once. Let me tell you something about Grace Mitchell, Mrs. Thompson said, bouncing Destiny gently. That woman spent 60 years planning and saving for exactly this moment. She knew that when the right person came along, they'd need to move fast to do maximum good. The right person? What if I'm not the right person? Child, you think Grace left $83 million to the wrong person? That woman was sharper than a tack right up until the day she passed. She chose you because she saw something in you that you're just now seeing in yourself. As if summoned by their conversation, Simone's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Tanya. We need to talk about Derek and the babies. He's been lying to both of us. Simone showed the message to Mrs. Thompson, who raised an eyebrow. Looks like Derek's chickens are coming home to roost, the older woman said. Question is, are you going to get involved in that mess or are you going to keep building something beautiful? Simone looked around her apartment, at the building plans, at her sleeping daughter, at the future she was creating one decision at a time. I'm going to keep building, she said, deleting Tanya's message without responding. Derek's problems aren't my problems anymore. And for the first time since that terrible night in the hospital, she truly meant it. The Mitchell Family Wellness Center was beginning to take shape. Simone stood in what would become the main waiting room, watching workers install child-friendly furniture and soft lighting. The walls were painted in soothing earth tones, and the children's area featured a mural of children playing that had been donated by a local artist. Miss Parker? One of the contractors approached with a clipboard. We're ready for your approval on the final room layouts. Simone walked through each space, amazed at how her sketches had become reality. The exam rooms were spacious and comfortable, designed to feel more like living rooms than medical facilities. The consultation offices had large windows and comfortable seating for families. The support group room could accommodate 20 people with space for children to play nearby. It's perfect, she said, signing off on the work. Patricia arrived as the contractors were packing up for the day. The medical equipment will be delivered tomorrow, she announced. And I have news about staffing. They sat in the future break room, sharing coffee from a thermos while Destiny napped in her carrier. Dr. Rodriguez from the pediatric clinic wants to join us part-time, Patricia said. She's tired of insurance companies dictating her patient care. And Sarah Martinez, the social worker from Family Services? She's ready to come on board full-time. That's wonderful. What about the support group facilitator? I have someone in mind, but you're going to find this interesting. Remember Nurse Janet from the NICU? She went through a messy divorce last year, ended up a single mother herself. She's been thinking about transitioning into counseling. This could be perfect for both of you. Simone smiled. It seems like Grace's plan is bringing together all the right people. Speaking of plans, Patricia's expression grew serious. There's something you should know. Derek has been asking questions around the hospital, trying to find out details about your inheritance. Let him ask. There's nothing he can do about it. Maybe not legally, but he's spreading stories, telling people you're keeping his daughter from him, that the money has changed you. Simone felt anger rise in her chest, then let it settle. The only people whose opinions matter to me are the ones who were here when I had nothing. Everyone else can think whatever they want. That evening, Carmen brought dinner and helped Simone put together the crib that would go in the wellness center's nursery, a place where mothers could bring their babies during appointments or support group meetings. Derek called me today, Carmen said casually, not looking up from the instruction manual. Simone's hand stilled on the crib rail she was holding. What did he want? To pump me for information. Asked about your inheritance, about the clinic, about whether you were dating anyone. Carmen looked up. I told him you were too busy building an empire to worry about his opinion. Good answer. But Simone, he's persistent. And he's getting desperate. Tanya kicked him out last week. How do you know that? Because she called me too. Wanted to warn you that Derek is planning something. Apparently, he's been talking to some lawyer about father's rights and claiming part of your inheritance for Destiny's benefit. Simone felt her blood run cold. He can't do that, can he? I don't know, but you better call Mr. Crawford first thing tomorrow. The next morning's phone call with her lawyer was reassuring but sobering. Derek has no legal claim to your inheritance, Mr. Crawford explained. But he could potentially file for custody or increased visitation rights, claiming that his financial circumstances have changed and he's now ready to be a full-time father. His financial circumstances haven't changed. Mine have. That's completely different. You and I know that, but family court can be unpredictable. The good news is that Grace anticipated this possibility. There are provisions in the trust that protect Destiny's interests specifically from anyone who abandoned their parental responsibilities. What kind of provisions? Let's just say Grace was very thorough in documenting Derek's character and actions. If he wants to fight, we're well prepared. That afternoon, Simone was interviewing potential staff for the wellness center when the receptionist buzzed her office. Miss Parker? There's a Derek Parker here to see you. He says he's your husband. Ex-husband, Simone corrected. Tell him I'm not available. He says he'll wait. Simone looked at the nurse practitioner sitting across from her desk. A young black woman named Keely Johnson who'd driven 2 hours for the interview. I'm sorry about this. Family drama. Don't apologize. I understand complicated family situations. Should I come back another time? No, let's finish this. Simone pressed the intercom button. Please tell Mr. Parker that if he wants to discuss anything related to our daughter, he can contact my attorney. Otherwise, he needs to leave. 15 minutes later, Derek was gone, but Simone found herself shaken by the encounter. She'd managed to handle his phone calls and messages, but seeing him in person, in her space in the clinic she was building, felt like a violation. Carmen found her an hour later, sitting in the empty support group room and staring out the window. Heard Derek paid a visit. He looks different. Older. Tired. Simone turned away from the window. For just a second I felt sorry for him. And then I remembered that he made his choices. He chose Tanya over me. He chose to walk away from Destiny. He chose to come back only when he heard about money. She stood up, her resolve returning. He doesn't get to waltz back into our lives just because his other options didn't work out. That evening, as Simone fed Destiny in her apartment, she thought about the conversation with Derek she'd avoided. Part of her was curious about what he'd wanted to say, what justifications he'd prepared, what promises he'd make. But a bigger part of her knew that nothing he could say would change the fundamental truth. He'd had the chance to be Destiny's father and he'd walked away. Now she was building a different kind of legacy. Not just the clinic, not just the money, but a foundation of strength and self-reliance that she would pass on to her daughter. Grace had given her more than wealth. She'd given her the power to choose her own story. And Simone chose to write a story where abandoned women became empowered mothers, where community mattered more than individual wealth, and where little girls grew up knowing they never had to depend on anyone who didn't choose to be dependable. Derek Parker was welcome to visit that story, but he would never again be allowed to edit it. The grand opening of the Mitchell Family Wellness Center drew a crowd that spilled out onto Fifth Street. Local news crews interviewed patients and staff, community leaders cut the ribbon, and Simone found herself overwhelmed by the support from neighbors who'd followed her journey from abandoned mother to community advocate. Elder Mrs. Thompson held destiny while Simone spoke to the gathered crowd. This center exists because of a woman named Grace Mitchell, who understood that real wealth isn't what you keep, it's what you give, Simone said into the microphone. But it also exists because of all of you who showed me that community support isn't charity, it's family. The applause was warm and genuine. Simone looked out at faces she recognized. Patricia and the nurses from St. Mary's, Carmen beaming with pride, neighbors who'd helped with groceries during those desperate early weeks, families who would now have access to affordable health care. She didn't see Derek until the crowd began to thin. He stood at the edge of the parking lot, holding a baby carrier and looking uncertain. Next to him stood a young woman Simone recognized from photos as Tanya. Though she looked tired and stressed, nothing like the confident homewrecker Simone had imagined. Carmen noticed them too. "You want me to handle this?" "No," Simone said, handing her speech notes to Patricia. "I've got it." She walked across the parking lot, her heels clicking on the pavement, feeling stronger and more confident than she had in months. The woman approaching Derek and Tanya wasn't the broken, abandoned wife he'd left behind. This woman owned a building, employed a dozen people, and had the resources to fight any battle he wanted to start. "Simone," Derek said as she approached. "Congratulations. This is impressive." "Thank you." She looked at the baby in the carrier, a little boy with Derek's nose and Tanya's eyes. "He's beautiful." Tanya spoke for the first time, her voice quiet but determined. "I owe you an apology. I knew Derek was married when we started seeing each other. I told myself it was complicated, that he was going to leave anyway, but that doesn't excuse what I did." Simone studied the younger woman's face. She looked exhausted and overwhelmed, exactly how Simone had felt those first weeks after Destiny's birth. "How are you managing?" Simone asked. "Single motherhood is hard." "I'm not managing well," Tanya admitted. "Derek promised he'd take care of both families, but—" She gestured helplessly. "But he can't even take care of one family properly," Simone finished. "That's what I learned that night in the hospital." Derek shifted uncomfortably. "I came here to talk about Destiny. About being in her life." "And what changed your mind about that?" "Because 6 months ago, you couldn't get away from us fast enough." "I was scared. I made mistakes." "You made choices," Simone corrected. "And now you want to make different choices because you heard I inherited money." "It's not about the money." Simone looked at him steadily. "Derek, you've never done anything in your life that wasn't about money or convenience. Why should I believe you're starting now?" Tanya spoke up again. "Because he's not. He asked me to come here with him because he thought seeing both babies together would make you feel guilty enough to let him back into Destiny's life." Derek's face reddened. "Tanya." "No, she deserves the truth." Tanya turned to Simone. "He's been trying to figure out how to get access to your money through Destiny. He thinks if he can establish parental rights, he can claim child support or influence how her trust fund is managed." Simone felt a cold anger settle in her chest, but her voice remained steady. "Is that true, Derek?" "That's not. It's more complicated than that." "No, it's really not." Simone pulled out her phone and called Mr. Crawford. "James? I'm at the clinic with Derek in his situation. Could you come down here, please? I think we need to have that conversation about parental rights documentation right now." While they waited for the lawyer, an awkward silence settled over the group. Simone looked at Tanya, recognizing something familiar in her exhausted face. "When was the last time you had a checkup?" she asked. "For you or the baby?" "I can't afford." "The clinic offers sliding scale fees. And we have a support group for new mothers that meets Tuesday evenings. Free child care included." Tanya's eyes filled with tears. "Why are you being nice to me? I ruined your marriage." "You didn't ruin my marriage. My marriage was already broken. I just didn't know it yet." Simone looked at Derek, then back at Tanya. "And you're a mother now. That baby deserves to have his mother healthy and supported, regardless of how he got here." Derek stared at both women, clearly confused by this turn in the conversation. "So we're all just going to be friends now?" "We're going to be civil for the sake of our children," Simone said. "But Derek, let me be very clear about something. You will never have access to my inheritance through Destiny or any other means. If you want to be in her life, it will be because you've proven you can be a good father, not because you want to be a good provider when it's convenient. Mr. Crawford arrived 20 minutes later with a folder full of documents. I think we can settle this quickly, he said, spreading papers across the hood of Simone's car. Derek, these are the terms under which you can have supervised visitation with Destiny. They include background checks, parenting classes, consistent support payments, and absolutely no access to any trust funds or inheritance money. Derek scanned the documents, his face growing darker with each page. This is ridiculous. She's my daughter. Then prove it, Simone said simply. Take the classes. Pay the support. Show up consistently. Be the father she deserves. And if I don't agree to these terms? Then you'll see Destiny when she turns 18 and decides for herself whether she wants a relationship with you. Derek looked from the papers to Simone to Tanya, clearly realizing that his manipulation had backfired spectacularly. I need time to think about this, he said finally. You have 24 hours, Mr. Crawford said, collecting the papers. After that, the offer expires and we proceed with full custody documentation. As Derek and Tanya walked away, Simone felt a strange sense of peace. The confrontation she'd been dreading had happened, and she'd emerged stronger than before. Carmen and Patricia joined her in the parking lot as the last of the opening day crowd dispersed. How do you feel? Carmen asked. Simone looked back at the clinic, her clinic, with its warm lights and full parking lot and promise of healing. Then she looked down at Destiny, sleeping peacefully in Mrs. Thompson's arms, completely unaware of the drama swirling around her young life. I feel free, she said finally. For the first time in my adult life, I feel completely free. And she was. Free from Derek's manipulation, free from financial worry, free from the fear that she wasn't strong enough to build the life she and Destiny deserved. Grace Mitchell's inheritance had given her money, but more importantly, it had given her the power to choose her own story. And this story, surrounded by community, building something meaningful, raising her daughter with dignity and strength, was exactly the story she wanted to write. 6 months after the clinic opened, Simone stood in the renovated space watching Dr. Rodriguez examine a newborn while the baby's teenage mother asked questions about breastfeeding. In the next room, Sarah Martinez counseled a woman about housing assistance, and upstairs the Tuesday evening support group was in full swing. The Mitchell Family Wellness Center had become exactly what Grace had envisioned, a place where women could find not just medical care, but community and empowerment. Miss Parker? Janet Williams, the support group facilitator, appeared at Simone's elbow. Could I speak with you for a moment? They walked to Simone's office, where Destiny was napping in the pack-and-play that had become a permanent fixture. At 8 months old, she'd become the clinic's unofficial mascot, charming patients and staff alike. We have a situation, Janet said, settling into the chair across from Simone's desk. One of our support group members is in crisis. Her boyfriend just left her, she's pregnant with twins, and she's about to be evicted. What kind of help does she need? Everything. Housing, medical care, emotional support. She's 22, works part-time at a grocery store, no family support. Janet paused. Her name is Monica. She reminds me a lot of where you were a year ago. Simone didn't hesitate. What can we do? I was hoping you'd say that. I've been thinking about expanding our services. Not just support groups and counseling, but emergency housing assistance. Maybe even temporary housing for women in crisis. Like a halfway house? More like transitional housing with support services. I've been researching models in other cities. There's a house for sale 2 blocks from here, big Victorian, that could house 4 or 5 women and their children temporarily. Simone pulled up the property listing on her computer. The house was beautiful but needed work, listed at $600,000. Send me everything you've researched, she said. And schedule a meeting with Mr. Crawford. If this is viable, we'll make it happen. That evening, Simone sat in her own living room. She decided to stay in the apartment rather than buy a mansion, preferring to invest Grace's money in the community, reviewing Janet's research while Destiny played on a blanket nearby. Carmen arrived with takeout and wine, settling onto the floor beside them. So now you're buying houses too? Not for me. For the clinic. Transitional housing for women in crisis. Simone showed her the proposal. We could provide safe housing for up to 6 months while women get on their feet. Job training, childcare, support services. That's ambitious. Also expensive. Grace left me $83 million. I've spent maybe $2 million on the clinic and property. I think I can afford to help a few more women. Carmen studied the plans, then looked around the modest apartment. You know, most people who inherit that kind of money would buy themselves a mansion first. I don't need a mansion. Destiny and I are happy here. We're close to the clinic, close to everything we need. Simone picked up her daughter, who'd crawled over to investigate the takeout containers. Besides, what's the point of having all that money if I'm not using it to solve problems? And Derek? Any word from him? He signed the custody agreement 3 months ago. Supervised visits every other Saturday, parenting classes completed, support payments current. Simone shrugged. He's actually been consistent about it. That's surprising. I think Tanya's influence. She's been coming to the support group and she's changed a lot. More mature, more focused on what's actually good for their children. And how's that working out? Having your ex-husband's baby mama in your support group? Simone considered the question. Better than I expected. She's a good mother and she keeps Derek accountable. Plus, the boys are half-siblings. It's good for them to know each other. A knock at the door interrupted their conversation. Through the peephole, Simone saw a delivery driver holding a large floral arrangement. The flowers were beautiful, white roses and lilies arranged in an expensive vase. The card read, "Thank you for giving me a second chance to be the father Destiny deserves. Derek." Carmen read over her shoulder. Okay, that's actually sweet. It is, Simone admitted. He's been working hard in therapy and his visits with Destiny have been going well. Any chance you two might? No, Simone said firmly. We're good co-parents now, but that's all we'll ever be. Too much has happened. Fair enough. So what about dating? It's been over a year and you're young, successful and gorgeous. Simone laughed. I'm also busy running a clinic and raising a baby. When exactly would I have time to date? You make time for the things that matter to you. Before Simone could respond, her phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. Hello? Miss Parker? This is Robert Hayes. My daughter Emma is a patient at your clinic, and Dr. Rodriguez suggested I call you. Simone remembered Emma, a shy 5-year-old who'd been coming in for regular checkups with her father, a single dad who worked construction. Is everything okay with Emma? She's fine. Great, actually. Dr. Rodriguez has been wonderful with her. There was a pause. I was wondering if I could take you to dinner sometime. As a thank you. And because Emma keeps asking if the nice lady doctor can come to our house for dinner. Carmen was making exaggerated, encouraging gestures from across the room. Simone covered the phone and whispered, "Stop it. Miss Parker? Are you there? I'm here. And I'm flattered, but I make it a policy not to date patients' parents. I understand. But maybe, would you consider coming to dinner with Emma and me anyway? Just as friends? She's been through a lot with her mother's death last year, and having positive female role models in her life has been really important." Simone felt her resolve softening. She'd noticed how well cared for Emma always was, how polite and sweet, how much love was evident between father and daughter. Let me think about it, she said finally. After hanging up, Carmen pounced. You're going to dinner with construction dad, aren't you? His name is Robert. And it would just be dinner with him and his daughter. Wow. And he's cute? Simone searched for words. He's a good father. He reminds me of the kind of man Derek should have been. So he's cute. So he's kind. And reliable. And he shows up for his daughter every single time. Carmen grinned. He's definitely cute. That night, after Carmen left and Destiny was asleep, Simone stood at her window looking out at the city lights. A year ago, she'd been an abandoned wife with a newborn baby and no idea how she'd survive. Now she was a successful businesswoman, a community leader, and a mother raising her daughter with confidence and pride. Grace's inheritance had given her the money to build this life, but the strength had been inside her all along. Derek's abandonment hadn't broken her, it had revealed exactly how strong she was. And maybe, just maybe, she was ready to let someone else see that strength too. She picked up her phone and texted Robert Hayes, "Dinner sounds lovely. When works for you and Emma?" His response came immediately, "How about this Sunday? Emma can show you her garden." Simone smiled, typing back, "It's a date. I mean dinner. It's a dinner." 3 dots appeared, then, "I was hoping it might be both." Outside her window, the city sparkled with possibility. Grace's gift kept growing, touching more lives, creating more opportunities for healing and hope. And for the first time since Derek had walked out of that hospital room, Simone felt like her own story might have room for new chapters she hadn't planned yet. The transitional housing project was moving forward faster than anyone expected. Simone stood in the newly purchased Victorian house, watching contractors remove walls to create more open spaces for the women and children who would soon call it home. The first floor will have communal areas and 2 bedrooms for mothers with multiple children, she explained to the social worker who'd be managing the program. Second floor has 4 smaller bedrooms for single mothers with 1 child each. And the third floor will be converted into office space for counselors and caseworkers. It's perfect, said Dr. Amanda Foster, the program director they'd hired from a similar initiative in Atlanta. The women will have privacy but also community support. And being walking distance from the clinic means easy access to medical care and support groups. Destiny sat in her stroller, babbling happily at the construction workers who'd all learned her name and competed to make her smile. At 10 months old, she was walking with support and had become the unofficial supervisor of all clinic and housing projects. Miss Parker? One of the contractors approached with blueprints. We're ready to start the kitchen renovation, but we wanted to confirm the specifications for the commercial-grade appliances. As Simone reviewed the plans, her phone buzzed with a call from Mr. Crawford. I have news, he said without preamble. Derek's filed a motion to modify the custody agreement. Simone's stomach tightened. What kind of modification? He wants overnight visits and shared custody. Claims he's completed his parenting requirements and proven his reliability. Has he? Technically, yes. He's been consistent with visits, completed the classes, stayed current on support. The question is whether you want to fight it or negotiate. Simone looked around the house she was renovating for women in crisis, thinking about the clinic that served families in need, considering the life she'd built from the ashes of Derek's abandonment. I'll call you back, she said. I need to think. That evening, Simone found herself at Carmen's apartment, sitting on the floor while their daughters played together. Carmen's 2-year-old Rosa and Destiny had become best friends, and watching them together always reminded Simone of how important community was in raising children. What's really bothering you about Derek's request? Carmen asked. Because legally, it sounds like he's done everything he was supposed to do. I guess I'm afraid, Simone admitted. What if he reverts to the old Derek once he gets more access? What if he disappoints Destiny the way he disappointed me? And what if he doesn't? What if he's actually grown up? Simone considered this. Over the past several months, Derek had been punctual for every visit, engaged with Destiny during their time together, and respectful in his interactions with Simone. Tanya had mentioned in support group that he'd been attending therapy consistently and taking parenting seriously. 1 year later, Simone stood before another crowd gathered outside the Mitchell Family Wellness Center. But this time, the occasion was the grand opening of the Grace Mitchell Transitional Housing Program, and the crowd included the first residents, 5 women and their children who'd moved into the beautifully renovated Victorian house. Grace Mitchell understood that true wealth isn't measured in dollars, it's measured in lives changed, families strengthened, and communities lifted up, Simone said into the microphone. This housing program represents her belief that everyone deserves a second chance and the support to make the most of it. The applause was warm and heartfelt. Simone looked out at the faces in the crowd, elder Mrs. Thompson holding Destiny, who was now walking confidently and charming everyone within reach, Carmen beaming with pride, Patricia and the clinic staff who'd become like family, the residents of the housing program, some tearful with gratitude, and Derek standing respectfully at the back, having become a reliable co-parent and genuine supporter of her work. Near the front, Robert Hayes held his daughter Emma's hand, both of them smiling. Over the past year, their relationship had grown slowly and naturally, built on friendship, shared values, and the mutual understanding that their children came first. Last month they'd started talking about moving in together, a big step that felt right for all 4 of them. But this program exists because of more than one person's vision, Simone continued. It exists because of what happens when a community decides to care for its most vulnerable members. When we choose to lift each other up instead of judging each other's circumstances. After the ceremony, Simone found herself in the transitional house's common room, surrounded by the women and children who would call it home. Monica, the young woman pregnant with twins who'd inspired the program, was now mother to 2 healthy 6-month-old boys and working part-time at the clinic while taking online college courses. I keep thinking I'm going to wake up and this will all be a dream, Monica said, bouncing one of her sons on her hip. A year ago I was sleeping in my car. Now I have a beautiful place to live, a job I love, and a path to my nursing degree. You earned all of this, Simone reminded her. The program just provided the platform. You did the work. We all did the work, added Keisha, another resident who'd fled an abusive relationship and was now training to be a paralegal. But having this place, this support system, it makes all the difference. As the evening wound down, Simone walked through the clinic one more time before heading home. The space that had started as her response to personal crisis had become something much larger. A hub of healing and hope that served hundreds of families each month. Her phone buzzed with a text from Grace's lawyer, Mr. Crawford. The foundation paperwork is finalized. The Grace Mitchell Foundation for Women and Families is officially established. You're now running a multi-million-dollar charitable organization. Grace would be proud. Simone smiled, thinking about the great aunt she'd barely known but who'd somehow understood exactly who she was and who she could become. The foundation would ensure that the work continued long after Simone was gone, that other women facing impossible circumstances would find the support and resources they needed. At home, she found Robert in the kitchen preparing bottles for bedtime, a routine they'd established on the nights he and Emma stayed over. The sight of him caring for Destiny with the same tenderness he showed his own daughter never failed to warm her heart. "How did it go?" he asked, handing her Destiny's bottle. "Perfect. Overwhelming. Amazing." She settled into the rocking chair that Mrs. Thompson had insisted belonged in every home with children. "I keep thinking about that night in the hospital when Derek left. I thought my life was over. And now I realize it was just beginning." Robert sat on the arm of the chair, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. "Emma asked me something today that I thought you should know about." "What's that?" "She wanted to know if, when we all move in together, you'd be willing to adopt her. Officially, I mean. So she could have you as her mom forever." Simone's eyes filled with tears. "What did you tell her?" "I told her that was a decision for all the adults to make together, but that I thought you loved her enough to consider it." "I do love her. And I'd be honored to be her mother officially. And I'd be honored to be Destiny's father officially, if that's something you'd want too." Simone looked down at Destiny, who was drinking her bottle contentedly, completely secure in the knowledge that she was loved and safe. Then she looked at Robert, this good man who'd shown up consistently in their lives, who'd never tried to rush or pressure, who'd simply been present and caring and real. "I think," she said slowly, "that Grace would approve of this family we're building." Later that night, after the children were asleep and Robert had gone home to prepare for Emma's school day, Simone sat at her kitchen table reviewing the foundation documents. The Grace Mitchell Foundation would fund transitional housing programs in 5 cities within the next 3 years. It would provide scholarships for single mothers pursuing nursing degrees. It would support community health clinics in underserved areas. But more than that, it would continue Grace's legacy of believing in people others had written off, of investing in potential rather than just current circumstances. Simone thought about the women sleeping peacefully in the transitional house, dreaming of futures that had seemed impossible a year ago. She thought about Monica's twins, who would grow up knowing that their mother's strength had carried them through the darkest times. She thought about Emma, who'd lost her mother but was learning that families could be built in many different ways. She thought about Destiny, who would grow up surrounded by love and never doubt her own worth. Derek had left that hospital room thinking he was choosing a better life. But what he'd actually done was clear the way for something infinitely better than what they'd had together. Simone picked up Grace's original letter, which she kept framed on her desk. "Build something beautiful, Simone. Build a life worthy of that precious daughter. And know that somewhere I'm smiling." Outside her window, the lights of the clinic and the transitional house glowed softly in the darkness. Inside those buildings, families were healing, women were finding their strength, children were growing up safe and loved. Grace Mitchell's $83 million had built an empire of caring that would outlast them all. But more importantly, Simone Parker had built something beautiful from the ashes of her worst day. She'd taken abandonment and turned it into abundance, betrayal and turned it into belonging, desperation and turned it into hope. The inheritance of strength, it turned out, was something you could pass on forever. And somewhere in the space between earth and sky, Grace Mitchell was definitely smiling.